As the world quiets down, come with me into the sacred stories whispered through generations. Tonight, we journey to a time of kings and prophets of war and unexpected peace. We will walk alongside a man of immense power who carried a secret crippling sorrow, and we will witness how the simplest path, the one of humility and faith, can lead to the most profound healing. In our own lives, we often seek grand solutions for our deepest troubles, forgetting that sometimes the voice of God comes not in the earthquake or the fire, but in a still small whisper of hope. If this Bible story brings comfort and peace to your soul, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. It truly helps us share this message of faith, hope, and God's gentle peace with more people who may be searching for it in the quiet of the night. Now, gently lay down all the worries and burdens of the day. Find a quiet space for your mind and body. Let's take a moment to pray together, to breathe deeply, and to open our hearts to the wisdom, comfort, and wonders that unfold in God's timeless Word. You are in Damascus, not the Damascus of today, but the ancient capital of Aram, a city pulsing with life under a sun that bakes the very air you breathe. The sky above is a vast, unforgiving dome of brilliant blue, and the heat radiates in shimmering waves from the high sun-bleached walls that encircle this jewel of the desert. You can feel the fine dust of the trade routes on your skin, a testament to the caravans of camels and donkeys that flow in and out of the city gates like a slow, steady river. The air is thick with 1,000 scents, a chaotic and yet harmonious perfume of life. There is the sharp, savory aroma of roasting lamb and spiced chickpeas from the countless food stalls, the sweet, cloying scent of dates and honey cakes, the earthy smell of leather goods and dyed wool hanging in the shaded souks. Woven through it all is the dry, clean fragrance of cedarwood used in the grander homes, and the ever-present dusty scent of the desert itself, which clings to everything. The sounds are just as dense. It's a symphony of commerce and conversation. The sharp clang of a blacksmith's hammer striking an anvil rings out a rhythmic counterpoint to the boisterous haggling of merchants in the marketplace. You hear the bleating of goats being led through the crowded streets, the gentle cooing of doves in hidden courtyards, and the murmur of Aramaic, the local tongue spoken in 100 different tones, a merchant's loud boast, a mother's soft call to her child, a scholar's quiet debate. This city is a crossroads of the world, a place of power, wealth, and unyielding pride. It is the heart of a kingdom that stands strong and defiant, a frequent and formidable adversary to its southern neighbor, the kingdom of Israel. And in this city of strength, there is one name that is spoken with more reverence, more awe, and more gratitude than even that of the king himself. The name is Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram. When his name is whispered in the marketplace or declared in the royal court, a hush falls. People nod in solemn respect. For through Naaman, the Lord, even though the Arameans may not fully recognize, the source has given victory to Aram. He is not just a general, he is a national hero, a living legend. You see him now, his chariot thundering through the main thoroughfare, parting the crowds like a bronze plow through a field of wheat. The chariot itself is a work of art and intimidation. Polished bronze plates gleam, catching the fierce sun and throwing flashes of light that make you squint. The wooden frame is strong, carved with symbols of power lions and eagles. It is pulled by two magnificent stallions, their coats the color of desert sand, their muscles rippling with contained energy. They are war horses, trained and powerful, and they respond to the slightest touch of Naaman's reins. Flanked by a cadre of elite soldiers, their spear tips glinting their faces, grim and disciplined, Naaman is the very picture of authority and martial glory. As he passes, you see the faces of the people. The merchants stop their haggling to salute. The children stop their games to stare in wide-eyed wonder. He is a mighty man of valor, a giant in their eyes. His posture is erect, his shoulders broad. He wears a cuirass of intricate scale armor that clinks softly with the movement of the chariot, and a helmet plumed with horsehair that adds to his imposing height. His face, what you can see of it, is etched with the lines of command and the scars of past battles. His eyes are sharp, constantly scanning, missing nothing. He is a man accustomed to being obeyed, accustomed to victory, accustomed to the weight of an entire nation's security resting upon his shoulders. He is by every worldly measure a man who has everything: power, prestige, wealth, the king's favor, and the adoration of his people. But the chariot does not stop at the royal palace. It continues on through the grander avenues where the homes of the wealthy and powerful stand behind high walls and heavy gates. It comes to a stop before one of the most impressive villas in all of Damascus. Servants rush out their heads, bowed to take the reins of the horses and to open the gates to a sprawling private courtyard. Here inside the walls, the chaos of the city fades away. The air is cooler. The sound of a fountain trickles a gentle melody of water splashing over stone. There are pomegranate trees and shady palms. This is Naaman's sanctuary, his personal kingdom. You follow him as he steps down from the chariot. The servants are deferential, almost fearful. They avert their eyes. His wife may come out to greet him, a woman of noble bearing, draped in fine linen and adorned with gold from the spoils of her husband's campaigns. There is love in her eyes, but also a shadow, a flicker of a deep and constant sorrow that even the grandeur of their home cannot erase. For once, Naaman passes through the heavy cedar doors of his private chambers, away from the adoring public and the disciplined soldiers. He removes the mask of the invincible commander, and you see the secret that lies beneath the gleaming armor and the fine robes. Slowly, carefully, he begins to unbuckle the leather straps of his cuirass. The heavy bronze armor is lifted away by a trusted servant, revealing a tunic of the finest Sidonian linen, dyed a deep royal purple. But it is what happens next that reveals the truth. With a sigh that seems to carry the weight of the world, he removes the tunic. And there, on the skin of this mighty warrior, this hero of Aram, are the first telltale signs. The pale, luminous patches. The slight thickening of the skin. It is leprosy. The dreaded Zara. In the ancient world, this word carries a terror that is hard for us to comprehend. It is more than a physical disease. It is a sentence of slow-living death. It is a mark of divine disfavor, a sign of impurity that separates a person not just from their community, but in the minds of many, from their gods. While Naaman's form of the disease is perhaps in its early stages, allowing him to still command and function. The diagnosis is a death knell to his honor, his future, and his identity. Every morning, he must wake and inspect his own skin, dreading the discovery of a new spot, the inexorable spread of the affliction that will one day consume him. It is a source of profound private shame. The armor he wears in public is not just for protection in battle, it is a shield to hide his creeping decay. The fine linen robes are chosen not just for their beauty, but to conceal the blemishes on his flesh. The most powerful man in Aram is being unmade from the inside out by an enemy. He cannot fight a foe. He cannot conquer with sword or spear. Consider for a moment the immense irony. This man, who has faced down entire armies, who has stood firm in the clash of bronze and iron, is terrified of a quiet discoloration on his own arm. He who commands thousands has no command over the cells of his own body. He has brought victory and treasure to his king. But all the gold in Aram, all the silver in the world, cannot buy him a single inch of healthy skin. This is a humbling of the highest order, a reminder that human power, no matter how great, has its absolute limits. God, in His mysterious providence, allows even the mightiest to be brought low, perhaps so that they might learn to look up. In this grand house, filled with servant soldiers and family, Naaman is utterly alone in his suffering. The secret festers, creating a chasm of isolation around him. Who can he talk to who would understand? To reveal his condition would be to invite fear, revulsion, and political ruin. His enemies within the court would seize upon it as a weakness. The soldiers who follow him without question might see him as cursed. So he bears his burden in silence, the vibrant, powerful city of Damascus, a mere backdrop to his slow internal collapse. The splashing fountain in his courtyard sounds less like peace and more like the ticking away of his remaining time. The sweet scent of the pomegranates is lost on him, for all he can smell is his own fear. But there is a flicker of light in this opulent, sorrowful house. It comes from the most unlikely of sources. It is not found in the council of the king or in the temples of the Aramean gods, Rimmon and Hadad. It is not found in the physician's satchel or the magician's incantations. The light comes from a young girl, a child. You see her as she goes about her duties. She is an Israelite, a captive. She was taken in one of the many raids that the Aramean armies under Naaman's command had conducted against Israel. She has lost everything: her home, her family, her freedom. She is now a slave, a spoil of war, serving the wife of the very man who led the army that destroyed her former life. By all rights, she should be filled with bitterness, hatred, and a desire for revenge. To see her captor, this great general afflicted with a horrifying disease, might have brought a grim satisfaction to a lesser soul. She could have rejoiced in his secret suffering, seeing it as a just punishment from her God. But that is not what is in her heart. As she works, sweeping the stone floors, fetching water, helping her mistress with her weaving, she is quiet and observant. She sees things that others miss. She sees the forced smile on Naaman's wife's face. She hears the heavy, solitary footsteps of the general pacing in his chambers at night. She senses the oppressive cloud of despair that hangs over this wealthy home. And her heart is moved, not with spite, but with a surprising and profound compassion. This is a divine grace at work, a testament to a faith that has not been extinguished by tragedy, but has perhaps been refined by it. Her faith is in the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is a faith that was taught to her by her parents in a land she may never see again. It is a faith in a God who is not confined to a temple in Jerusalem or a shrine on Mount Gerizim. She believes in a living God, a God who acts in the world, a God who hears the cries of the suffering, and a God who has appointed prophets to speak and act on his behalf. Her knowledge is not of grand theology, but of simple bedrock truth. My God is real. My God is powerful. My God is merciful. The ancient sages often wondered about this young girl. They gave her no name, for in her anonymity, she represents the countless quiet witnesses of faith throughout history. She is the small, seemingly insignificant instrument that God chooses to move the heart of a great and powerful man. It is a pattern we see again and again in the Scriptures. God does not choose the strong to shame the weak, but he often chooses the weak things of the world to shame the strong. He chooses a shepherd boy, David, to defeat a giant. He chooses a young Virgin Mary to bear the Savior. And here he chooses a captive servant girl to open the door to healing for the most feared commander in the region. One day, filled with this compassion, she finds the courage to speak. Perhaps her mistress is weeping quietly or sighing with a familiar sadness. The girl approaches her, not with insolence, but with genuine concern. Her voice is soft but firm, with the conviction of her faith. You can imagine the scene. The opulent room, the rich tapestries on the walls, the sunlight filtering through a high latticed window. The mistress lost in her grief, and this young girl, a mere shadow in the household, stepping into the light. If only, she says, her words a startling intrusion into the silent despair. If only my master would go to the prophet who is in Samaria. The words hang in the air. Samaria, the capital of the enemy kingdom, Israel. A prophet. Not a king, not a general, not a priest in a grand temple, but a prophet. A man of God. The girl's faith is so pure, so absolute, that she doesn't even hesitate. For he would cure him of his leprosy. It is a statement of fact, not of possibility. She does not say perhaps he could help, or it might be worth a try. She says he would cure him. This is the confidence of a faith that has seen the hand of God, a faith that knows his power is not limited by disease, or by national borders, or by the rank of the person in need. What an incredible moment this is! A slave girl is offering a cure to her master. The powerless is offering power. The captive is offering freedom. She is offering a hope that is more precious than all the gold her master possesses. Naaman's wife listens. In the depths of her desperation, she is willing to grasp at any straw of hope, no matter how strange its source. A prophet in Israel. It sounds absurd. They are the enemy. And yet, the earnestness, the simple, unwavering certainty in the girl's eyes touches her heart. There is no deceit, there only a pure, compassionate desire to see her master well. It is a seed of hope planted in the barren soil of their sorrow. This small act of speaking up is a profound lesson in itself. How often do we remain silent when a word of hope or faith could change everything we fear being ridiculed or dismissed or misunderstood. This girl, who had every reason to be silent, who risked being punished for her presumption, chose to speak. She acted out of love for the God she served, and a surprising grace-filled love for the very people who held her in bondage. It is a quiet act of spiritual warfare, fighting despair, not with anger, but with a testimony of God's goodness. The wife goes to Naaman. You can picture her repeating the girl's words, perhaps with a touch of hopeful desperation in her own voice. "My Lord, the girl from the land of Israel, she says there is a prophet in Samaria who can heal you." Naaman, the great general, the man of logic and strategy, listens. On one hand, it is preposterous. The gods of Aram, the powerful Hadad, who was thought to control the storm and the rain, have done nothing. The best physicians in Damascus are helpless. What could some rustic prophet of a rival nation's lesser god possibly do? His pride, the pride of a conqueror, rebels at the thought of seeking help from the conquered. To go to Israel as a supplicant, a sick man, would be a deep humiliation. And yet, the disease is spreading. The fear is constant. Desperation makes a person consider options they would otherwise dismiss. He has exhausted every other avenue. The temples have been visited. The incantations have been chanted. The poultices have been applied. Nothing has worked. Here, in the words of a child, is something he has not tried. A different path. A different God. This is the hinge upon which the entire story turns. The willingness of a great man to listen to the testimony of the least of all people in his household. He could have had the girl flogged for her impudence. He could have laughed in his wife's face. But the gnawing reality of his affliction makes him vulnerable, and in that vulnerability, there is an opening for grace. It is a profound spiritual truth. God often cannot get our attention when we are strong, successful, and self-reliant. It is in our moments of weakness, of failure, of desperation, that our ears are finally open to His call, even when it comes from the most unexpected messenger. Naaman makes a decision born of desperation, but a decision that will set in motion a chain of events far grander and more transformative than he could ever imagine. He will not let his pride be the death of him. He will swallow it. He will go to this prophet in Samaria. He will take this one last desperate chance for healing. But he is still Naaman, the great commander. He does not know how to be a humble supplicant. He knows only power, wealth, and diplomacy through strength. So he will approach this problem as he would approach any other major undertaking, with a show of force and a king's ransom. He prepares not for a pilgrimage of faith, but for a diplomatic mission of immense importance. He is going to buy his cure. He will pay the price, whatever it may be. He has no concept yet of a grace that cannot be bought, a healing that is a free gift. That is a lesson he has yet to learn. So, the preparations begin. The finest horses are chosen. The strongest chariots are prepared. And the treasure is amassed. It is a staggering amount, a fortune that could fund a war or build a new city. He is not just going to Israel. He is going to overwhelm them with the wealth and power of Aram to show them that he is not a mere beggar, but a great man seeking a service for which he will pay handsomely. The quiet, humble seed of faith planted by the servant girl is about to be encased in a massive worldly shell of pride and riches. The stage is being set for a confrontation, not of armies, but of two entirely different worlds, the world of human power and the world of divine grace. The journey to the Jordan begins here, not yet as a path to humility, but as a grand expedition of a proud and desperate man. The decision is made, and the vast machinery of Naaman's household grinds into motion. The preparations are not those of a humble pilgrim, but of a potentate on a state visit. You watch as heavy chests of acacia wood, bound with bronze, are brought into the main courtyard. Servants heave them open, and the sight within is breathtaking, a spectacle of immense wealth. This is the price he has decided his healing is worth. First comes the silver. 10 talents of silver. It is difficult to comprehend such a sum. A single talent is a massive weight, more than a man can comfortably lift, perhaps 75 pounds or more. 10 of them. It is a king's ransom, enough to pay an army of mercenaries for a year. The silver is not in coins, but in heavy, rough-hewn ingots, their pale surface gleaming in the sun. They are loaded with grunts and shouts, the chest groaning under the weight. This, Naaman believes, is the foundation of his negotiation. It speaks a universal language of power. Then comes the gold. 6,000 shekels of gold. While less in sheer bulk than the silver, its value is exponentially greater. The gold shekels are polished pieces, perhaps stamped with the insignia of some forgotten king or captured city. They glitter and chime as they are poured into smaller, more secure coffers. This is not just payment. It is a statement of status. It is meant to demonstrate that the man who offers it is a man of consequence, not to be trifled with. It is a worldly prayer offered not to a god, but to human greed and ambition, the only powers Naaman truly understands. And finally, there are the garments. 10 changes of clothing. Do not picture simple tunics and cloaks. These are ceremonial vestments, the kind worn in royal courts or on triumphal parades. They are woven from the finest Egyptian linen, so light it seems to float on the air, and dyed in colors that are astonishingly vibrant, the deep indigo of the sea, the rich crimson of crushed pomegranates, the prized Tyrian purple that is worth more than its weight in gold. Each garment is intricately embroidered with threads of silver and gold depicting scenes of hunts, battles, or mythological creatures. To be given one such garment would be a sign of immense royal favor. Naaman is bringing 10. He is not just going to buy a cure. He is planning to bestow honor upon the healer, to treat him as an equal, a king in his own right. It is a profound miscalculation, a fundamental misunderstanding of the economy of grace. He is trying to purchase a miracle as if it were a prized horse or a piece of land. The caravan is assembled. It is a formidable sight. Not just the treasure wagons, but a significant military escort. Naaman may be going on a mission of peace, but he is a general, and he travels as one. Soldiers in their bronze helmets and leather armor ride ahead, and behind their spears, held aloft the banner of Aram, fluttering in the hot breeze. The dust rises in a great cloud as the procession moves out of the gates of Damascus, a river of power and wealth flowing south toward the land of Israel. You are with Naaman in his lead chariot. The journey is long and arduous. The road south from Damascus is a well-worn path, a vein of the great international highway that connects Mesopotamia with Egypt. The initial part of the journey is pleasant enough through the fertile plains surrounding Damascus, a green basin fed by the rivers Abana and Pharpar, which Naaman so loves. He looks back at his city, a jewel of civilization, and a surge of pride mixes with the gnawing anxiety in his gut. As the caravan moves southward, the landscape begins to change. The lushness gives way to the more rugged rocky terrain of the Golan Highlands. To your right, the majestic snow-capped peak of Mount Hermon dominates the horizon, its white head a silent ancient witness to the countless travelers who have passed beneath it. The air grows drier, the sun more intense. The rhythmic clatter of the chariot wheels on the stony ground becomes a constant hypnotic sound, a drumbeat marking the slow passage of miles. During the long days on the road, Naaman is trapped with his own thoughts. The initial resolve gives way to moments of doubt. What is he doing? He is leading a small army and a vast treasure into the heart of enemy territory. He is placing his hope in the words of a captive slave girl. The absurdity of it strikes him again and again. He feels the familiar unwelcome itch beneath his tunic, a constant reminder of his body's betrayal. He looks at his hands, on the reins strong hands that have wielded a sword to cut down scores of enemies, and he sees the faint pale mottling of the skin. He is a walking contradiction, a powerful man in a decaying vessel. Consider the nature of this journey. We all undertake such journeys in our lives, leaving a place of comfort and familiarity to seek a healing we desperately need. And like Naaman, we often pack the wrong things for the trip. We pack our pride, our achievements, our wealth, our carefully constructed resumes of self-worth. We think these things will protect us, that they will be the currency we need to acquire what we lack. We believe our strength is in what we bring with us. But the path to true healing often requires us to be stripped of these things to arrive with empty hands so that they can be filled with something far greater. Naaman is not there yet. His hands are full. The caravan must be a terrifying sight to the Israelite farmers and villagers they pass. For generations, the name of Aram has meant war raids and captivity. And here is the very commander of the Aramean army marching through their land with a military escort. Doors are bolted. People hide. The caravan is given a wide berth. The fear in the air is palpable. Naaman's show of strength, intended to command respect, only succeeds in sowing terror and suspicion. This is what happens when we approach a spiritual problem with worldly tools. We create fear instead of trust and build walls instead of bridges. After several days of travel, they descend from the highlands into the Jordan Valley, crossing the great river, and then begin the ascent into the hill country of Samaria. Finally, they reach their destination, the city of Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel. Samaria sits proudly on a hill, a strategic location chosen by its founder King Omri decades earlier. It is a well-fortified city with impressive walls and a royal acropolis. But it lacks the sprawling ancient opulence of Damascus. It feels more practical, more militaristic. The welcome here is cold and formal. The city gates open, but the eyes of the Israelite soldiers are filled with mistrust. News of Naaman's approach has preceded him, and the entire city is on edge. Naaman, however, is undeterred. He follows his protocol. He is not here to see some back alley mystic. He is here on official business from one kingdom to another. He directs his chariot and his entourage straight to the highest point in the city, to the royal palace. This is a meeting of equals, or so he believes. He will deal with this matter from the top down. The court of the king of Israel is a tense place. The king himself, likely Joram's son of the infamous Ahab and Jezebel, is a man living in a precarious reality. His kingdom is politically unstable and under constant threat from Aram to the north, and at times Judah to the south. He has inherited a legacy of idolatry and divine displeasure. He is not a man resting securely on his throne. Naaman is granted an audience. He sweeps into the throne room, the picture of foreign power. His armor gleams. His escort is formidable. He presents himself with the arrogance of a conqueror, accustomed to victory, even on diplomatic missions. He bows curtly before King Joram, but it is the bow of one great power, acknowledging another, not the bow of a humble supplicant. He then presents the letter from his master, the king of Aram. King Joram takes the scroll. His hands may tremble slightly as he unrolls it. The seal of the king of Aram is a familiar and intimidating sight. He reads the words, and as he does, you can see the color drain from his face. The message is short, direct, and utterly terrifying in its implications. It is not a polite request. It is a demand, couched in the language of command. The ancient historians recorded the essence of the letter. It said something like this: "With this letter, I am sending my servant Naaman to you, so that you may cure him of his leprosy." Read those words from King Joram's perspective. He is not a prophet. He is not a magician. He is a king. His power lies in armies, taxes, and political treaties. The king of Aram is not asking for a political favor. He is demanding a miracle. Joram's mind races, and he can only see one possible interpretation. This is a trap. It is a deliberately impossible demand designed to be refused. And that refusal will be the pretext for a new war, a war that Israel can ill afford. The king of Aram is picking a fight, and he has chosen the most clever, diabolical way to do it. He has sent his prized general to be healed, and when Joram inevitably fails, Aram will have its righteous cause for invasion. Panic seizes the king. Cold, heart-pounding terror. He feels the walls of the throne room closing in on him. He looks at Naaman, this powerful, afflicted general standing before him like a living ultimatum. He looks at the letter in his hand, a death warrant for his people. He is trapped, utterly and completely trapped. In a gesture of ultimate despair and horror, King Joram does what men of his time and culture did when faced with unspeakable catastrophe. He takes the collar of his royal robe in both hands, and with a great agonized cry, he rips it from top to bottom. The sound of tearing fabric fills the shocked silence of the throne room. This is not a simple act of anger. Tearing one's clothes is a profound symbolic act in the ancient Near East. It is an outward sign of the deepest inward grief and helplessness. Jacob tore his clothes when he believed his son Joseph was dead. David tore his clothes when he heard of the death of Saul and Jonathan. It is a public declaration of being overwhelmed by circumstances beyond one's control. The king is in effect saying, "This is the end. We are doomed." Then his voice, filled with anguish and fury, he cries out the words that reveal the depths of his despair. "Am I God?" he shouts, his voice echoing in the hall. "Can I kill and bring back to life, that this man sends a man to me to cure him of his leprosy?" It is a cry of theological truth wrapped in political terror. Joram, for all his faults and his kingdom's idolatry, understands a fundamental reality: the power over life and death, over sickness and health, belongs to God alone. He is being asked to do something that only God can do. And because he cannot do it, he sees the sinister motive behind the request. "See how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me," he exclaims to his courtiers, holding up the torn edges of his robe as evidence of the calamity he faces. What a moment of supreme irony! Naaman has come seeking a cure, armed with a fortune. His great wealth and his king's powerful letter, the very things he trusted in, have achieved the exact opposite of his desire. Instead of opening a door to healing, they have provoked a major international crisis. He has brought his problem to the wrong address. He went to the palace of political power, assuming that the highest authority on earth would have the solution. But the king, the most powerful man in Israel, is as helpless as Naaman is. In fact, he is even more helpless because he sees the political trap that Naaman, in his single-minded quest, is blind to. The throne room is in chaos. Courtiers are murmuring in fear. Naaman stands there confused. This was not the reaction he expected. He expected negotiation, a discussion of price. Instead, he has been met with a display of utter panic and a king tearing his royal garments. The entire mission seems to be on the verge of collapsing into a disastrous political incident. Here, we see a profound spiritual lesson. We so often take our deepest needs for healing, for forgiveness, for purpose to the wrong authorities. We take them to the kings of this world, to wealth, to status, to human institutions, to our own intellect and power. And we find, like Naaman, that these kings are powerless. They can give us many things, but they cannot give us life. They cannot cleanse the leprosy of the soul. In their presence, we may even cause more trouble than we solve. The king's cry, "Am I God?" is a question every earthly power should ask itself. It is the recognition of ultimate limits. The news of the commotion in the palace travels fast in a city like Samaria. A torn royal robe is a public spectacle. The story spreads like wildfire through the streets and alleyways. The Aramean general is here. The king is in despair. He believes Aram is seeking a reason for war. The city is filled with fear and confusion. Naaman's meticulously planned expedition has gone terribly wrong. He stands in the middle of a foreign court, having created a crisis without even meaning to. The treasure wagons outside seem absurd now. The changes of fine clothing are useless. His military escort only adds to the tension. Everything he relied on has failed him. He is still a man with leprosy, but now he is also the cause of a near-certain war. He is at a dead end. The path of power and wealth has led to a wall of human helplessness and political fear. But it is often at this very point, when all human doors have been slammed shut, when our own plans lie in ruins, that another door, a humbler and more hidden door, begins to open. The news of the king's despair, of the Aramean general's impossible request, is about to reach the ears of the one person in Israel who will not panic. the one person who understands that this is not a political problem, but a spiritual opportunity. The servant girl's prophecy is hanging in the air, seemingly unfulfilled. But God's plan is not thwarted by human misunderstanding. The king's despair is simply the empty stage upon which the true power of God is about to make its entrance. The story is not over. It has merely reached the necessary point of human failure. The ripples of the king's panic spread from the palace through the tense streets of Samaria and out into the surrounding hill country. Word travels on the lips of merchants, soldiers, and servants. The king has torn his robes. The Aramean commander is here, demanding a miracle. War is coming. This news, a current of fear, eventually finds its way to a humble dwelling far from the pomp and politics of the royal court. It reaches the ears of Elisha, the man of God. You are with Elisha now. He is not in a grand temple or a luxurious home. Perhaps he is sitting in the shade of an olive tree near his simple whitewashed house, or perhaps he is inside praying or teaching a small group of the sons of the prophet's young men who have dedicated themselves to learning from him and serving the Lord. The contrast with Naaman's world is stark and deliberate. There are no bronze-plated chariots here, no chests of gold and silver. The air is not thick with the scent of power, but with the smell of baked bread, of dust, and of the dry grasses on the hillside. This is a place of quiet, of spiritual substance, not worldly show. Elijah is a figure of immense spiritual authority, but he wears it with a quiet humility. He is the successor to the great prophet Elijah, a man who was taken up to heaven in a chariot of fire. Elisha himself had asked for a double portion of Elijah's spirit, and his ministry has been marked by extraordinary miracles. He has purified a contaminated spring of water, multiplied a widow's oil, and even raised a Shunammite woman's son from the dead. He is a man who walks in intimate communion with the living God. He understands that the true currents of history are not moved by kings and armies, but by the will of Yahweh. When the news reaches him of the king's despair and the reason for it, Elisha is not alarmed. He is not surprised. He is not afraid. Where King Joram saw a political trap, Elisha sees a divine appointment. Where the king saw an impossible demand, Elisha sees a perfect opportunity for God to reveal his power. He understands that Naaman's arrival is not a pretext for war, but a sovereignly arranged encounter with grace. God has brought this powerful pagan general, this representative of a world built on pride and might, to the doorstep of Israel for a purpose. And that purpose is not to start a war, but to demonstrate that the God of Israel is the one true God, and that his power is supreme over all nations, all kings, and all diseases. Elisha's response is immediate and decisive. He does not go to the king. He does not rush to the palace. He simply sends a message. It is a message of gentle yet firm rebuke to the frantic king. You can imagine the messenger, one of the sons of the prophets, running to the palace, gaining an audience and delivering the prophet's words to the distraught Joram, who is likely still surrounded by his panicking advisors. The message is sharp and to the point. "Why have you torn your robes?" Elisha asks through his messenger. It is a question that cuts through all the political fear. It essentially says, why are you acting like a man who has no God? Why are you in a panic when you are the king of a nation whose God is the Lord of heaven and earth? It is a challenge to the king's lack of faith. In his moment of crisis, Joram had forgotten the single greatest resource his nation possessed, the presence of a true prophet and the God whom the prophet served. Then comes the instruction, a simple commanding statement. Let him come now to me, and he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel. These words are electric with spiritual authority. Let him come to me. Elisha is not boasting of his own power. He is declaring his function as God's representative. The phrase, he shall know that there is a prophet in Israel, is not about Elijah's personal reputation. It is about the reputation of God. Naaman came to the king, thinking power resided in the throne. Elisha is correcting his course. The real power, the power to heal and restore, is not in the palace. It is with the one who speaks for God. This is a rerouting of Naaman's entire quest away from the throne of man and toward the threshold of God's messenger. The King Joram must have received this message with a mixture of immense relief and perhaps a little shame. The prophet has offered a way out. The responsibility has been lifted from his shoulders. He has been reminded in no uncertain terms of where true power lies. He immediately does as Elisha says. A royal command is given. The great Aramean commander, with his entire glittering entourage, is to be redirected. Not to another palace, not to a state temple, but to the humble home of a prophet on the outskirts of the city. And so, the procession gets underway once more. The chariots thunder again. The horses snort the soldiers' march. Naaman, who must be thoroughly confused by this point, follows the new instructions. He has been sent from a king to a prophet. He is moving down the ladder of perceived social importance. He leaves the grand acropolis of Samaria and directs his caravan toward a much poorer, less assuming part of the region. You travel with him. The road becomes narrower, less maintained. The homes they pass are smaller, made of mud brick and rough stone. The opulence of Damascus and the political theater of Samaria's court feel a world away. Finally, the procession with all its military might and worldly wealth comes to a halt before a small, unremarkable house. The contrast is almost comical in its extremity. A dozen war horses and a full military escort crowded into a dusty lane in front of a dwelling that most of Naaman's servants wouldn't deign to live in. The treasure chests on the wagons seem gaudy and out of place. This cannot be right. Is this some kind of insult? Naaman sits in his chariot, a mountain of power and pride parked before a molehill of humility. He is the commander of the armies of Aram. He has a letter from his king. He has brought a fortune in gold and silver. He expects at the very least that this prophet Elisha will come out to greet him. He anticipates a ceremony. He imagines the prophet will emerge, perhaps dressed in sacred vestments, and perform some impressive ritual. He will wave his hands over the leprous spots, call upon the name of his God in a loud and dramatic voice, and enact a great public display of healing that befits a man of Naaman's stature. This is how power works in his world. There are protocols, displays of respect, and grand gestures. So he waits. The sun beats down. The dust kicked up by the horses begins to settle. The soldiers stand at attention, their spears glinting. The local villagers, if there are any brave enough to be watching, are likely peering from behind walls or from rooftops, marveling at the absurd spectacle. Naaman waits and waits, and nothing happens. Elijah does not come out. The man of God remains inside his house. This is a deliberate, calculated, and profoundly important act. Elisha is not trying to be rude. He is teaching the first and perhaps most difficult lesson in the curriculum of grace. The lesson is humility. Naaman has come as a great man, expecting to be treated as such. But he cannot receive God's gift as a great man. He must receive it as a desperate, broken man. He cannot be healed as a commander, but as a supplicant. By refusing to come out and greet him, Elisha is stripping away the outer layers of Naaman's identity. He is communicating in the powerful language of silence and absence that earthly rank and worldly wealth mean nothing here. Before the God of Israel, Naaman is not a general. He is simply a man in need of mercy. Consider the courage and spiritual clarity of Elisha. It would have been tempting to go out, to meet this famous general, to be seen by all as the one in charge, to bask for a moment in the reflected glory of such a powerful visitor. Human ego craves such moments. But Elisha is not serving his own ego. He is serving his God. And he knows that the healing of Naaman's soul is far more important than the healing of his skin. The healing of the soul must begin with the humbling of his pride. So Elisha stays inside in prayer, letting the proud general stew in his own importance. Finally, after what must have seemed like an eternity to Naaman, the door of the small house opens. But it is not Elisha who emerges. It is a servant, a messenger. His name is Gehazi. He is Elisha's attendant. He walks out, likely barefoot, dressed in the simple tunic of a servant, and approaches the magnificent chariot of the Aramean commander. He does not bow and scrape. He simply delivers the message his master has given him. The message is stunningly, insultingly simple. It is a command, not a negotiation. There is no preamble, no honorifics, no acknowledgement of Naaman's rank. Gehazi looks up at the great general and recites the prophet's words, "Go and wash yourself 7 times in the Jordan, and your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed." The words are plain, direct, and devoid of any ceremony. Go, a command. Wash yourself, an instruction for a common daily act, 7 times. A specific number, significant in Hebrew, thought as the number of completion and divine perfection, but to Naaman, it might just sound arbitrary and strange. In the Jordan, the river of Israel. And then the promise, your flesh will be restored, and you will be cleansed. Naaman is left there in his chariot with this simple, almost dismissive message. Let us break down the full weight of the insult as he would have perceived it. First, the prophet didn't even grant him the courtesy of a face-to-face meeting. He sent a servant. This is a calculated slight, a deep dishonor in the protocols of the ancient world. It places Naaman on the level of someone not even worthy of the prophet's personal attention. Second, the instruction itself is humbling. Go wash. This is not a grand mystical rite. It is what a dirty child is told to do. It lacks all the drama and spectacle he had anticipated. There is no magic, no incantation, no abracadabra. It is mundane. It feels like a fool's errand. Third, the location, the Jordan River. Naaman is a man of Damascus, a city renowned for its rivers. You can almost hear the indignation rising in his chest. The Abana and Pharpar rivers of Damascus are beautiful, powerful bodies of water flowing clear and strong from the mountains, bringing life and lushness to the entire region. The Jordan, by contrast, is for much of its course a muddy, winding, unimpressive river. To an Aramean, it is the river of the enemy, a sluggish, silt-filled waterway in a backwater country. The very idea of bathing in it for a cure is preposterous. And finally, the entire process lacks any recognition of his immense offering. What about the 10 talents of silver, the 6,000 shekels of gold, the 10 changes of festival robes? The prophet has not even acknowledged them. He has not asked for payment. He is offering a cure, if this ridiculous prescription can even be called that, for free. In Naaman's world, anything that is free is worthless. His entire framework for how the world operates has been turned upside down. He came to buy a miracle, and he has been told to go take a bath. The silence that follows Gehazi's message is heavy with Naaman's stunned disbelief, which is rapidly curdling into a hot, towering rage. He has been made a fool of. He has traveled all this way, humbled himself to come to this miserable country, brought a king's ransom, and for what, to be snubbed by a reclusive holy man and given a nonsensical instruction by a menial servant. His pride, which he had tried to swallow, comes roaring back to life more powerful than ever. This is a critical moment. It is the test. The servant girl's faith opened the door. The king's despair showed the limits of human power. Now Elisha's instruction presents the true path to healing, and is a path that goes directly through the valley of humiliation. The cure for Naaman's physical leprosy is being inextricably tied to the cure for his spiritual disease, the disease of pride. Before his skin can be cleansed, his ego must be broken. He is being asked to do something simple, something foolish in the eyes of the world. He is being asked to set aside his own wisdom, his own expectations, his own sense of honor, and simply obey. He is being asked to have faith, not in a grand ritual, but in the bare, unadorned word of God's prophet. The choice is his. He can turn his chariot around in a fury and return to Damascus, back to his wealth, his power, and his creeping disease. Or he can submit. He can accept the humiliation, face the foolishness, and obey this simple command. It is a battle being waged not on a field of war, but in the heart of a single man. And the outcome will determine not only his physical health, but the eternal destiny of his soul. At this moment, standing before the humble door of the prophet Naaman is at the most important crossroads of his life. The air in front of Elisha's house crackles with unspoken fury. Naaman sits frozen in his chariot, the prophet's simple message echoing in his mind, not as a promise of hope, but as a cascade of insults. The humiliation is a physical thing, a hot flush that creeps up his neck and burns his cheeks. His hands, the hands of a warrior, clench into fists on the leather reins. The muscles in his jaw tighten. For a long moment, there is only the sound of a restless horse stamping its hoof and the jingle of its harness. The mighty commander, the hero of Aram, has been utterly publicly dishonored. Then the dam of his composure breaks. He erupts. He turns away from the humble house, his face a mask of contempt and rage. He barks a command to his driver, a sharp, angry order to turn the chariots around. The entire grand procession, which had arrived with such expectation, now scrambles to obey the furious whim of its commander. Chariots wheel about. In the narrow space, soldiers turn on their heels, and the whole caravan prepares for a bitter retreat. As they begin to move, Naaman vents his fury speaking to his officers, but really to himself, his voice loud enough for all to hear. His words are a torrent of wounded pride and indignation. I thought to myself, he sputters the words tumbling out. I thought surely he will come out to me. You can hear the detailed scenario he had played out in his own mind, the script he had written for his healing. He will stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and wave his hand over the place and cure the leprosy. His fantasy was so vivid, so real to him. It was a scene filled with dignity, power, and mutual respect. A scene worthy of his status. The reality being ignored by the prophet and dismissed with a curt message from a servant is a jarring and unacceptable substitute. He had come expecting a theological performance, a spiritual spectacle. He was offered a mundane chore. This is the cry of a man whose expectations have been dashed, whose sense of entitlement has been profoundly violated. We all do this, do we not? We write the script for how God should answer our prayers, how he should solve our problems. We envision the grand gestures, the dramatic interventions. And when God's answer comes in a way that is simpler, quieter, or more humbling than we expected, we, like Naaman, are often tempted to turn away in anger and disappointment. His rage then fastens on the specific instruction: the Jordan River. The very name is an insult to his national pride. He gestures expansively, as if he could see his beloved Damascus from this dusty hillside in Samaria. Are not the Abana and the Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? He roars. It is a cry from the heart of a patriot. To him, this is not just about the quality of the water. The Abana and Pharpar are his rivers. They are the lifeblood of his glorious city. They are symbols of Aramean power and prosperity. In his mind, they are pure, clean, and potent. The Jordan, by contrast, is the river of his enemies. It is foreign, muddy, and contemptible. The command to wash in the Jordan is not just a medical prescription. It is a demand that he subordinate his national identity, that he admit that something from this backward land of Israel could be superior to what he has at home. His pride is not just personal, it is cultural and national. Could I not wash in them and be clean? He demands, his voice dripping with sarcasm. The logic seems impeccable to him. If washing is the cure, then surely washing in a superior river would be a superior cure. He is still thinking in terms of human logic and material quality. He cannot grasp the central point: the power is not in the water. It is not in the act of washing. The power is in the word of the prophet. The power is in the act of humble obedience to that word. The water of the Jordan is not magical. It is merely the chosen instrument, the stage upon which his obedience or disobedience will be displayed. God could have told him to go roll in the dust or stand on one foot for an hour. The command itself is secondary to the response it requires. His conclusion is swift and decisive. So he turned and went away in a rage. The great caravan begins its slow, angry retreat. The cloud of dust that rises seems to speak of frustration and failure. The mission is over. Hope is extinguished. Naaman is choosing his pride over his healing. He would rather return to Damascus and slowly rot with his leprosy than submit to this humiliating, nonsensical command. He would rather maintain his dignity, as he defines it, than receive the free gift of restoration. It is a tragic, pivotal moment. The story could end here. A great man came so close to a miracle and turned his back on it because it wasn't packaged the way he wanted. It is a story that has been repeated millions of times throughout human history. We stand at the river's edge, but we refuse to step in because the water is muddy, because the instructions feel foolish, or because our pride cannot bear the thought of such simple submission. We turn and walk away in a rage back to the familiar prisons of our afflictions. But God, in His mercy, has provided for this moment. He has planted agents of grace, not only in the form of a captive girl and a reclusive prophet, but also within Naaman's own staff. The great man is surrounded by his officers and servants, the very men who have followed him into countless battles. They have seen his courage, his strategic brilliance, and now they see his towering self-destructive rage. And in this critical moment, they do something extraordinarily brave. They intervene. They are his subordinates. He could have them flogged or executed for questioning his judgment. But their concern for him, their respect for him, outweighs their fear of his anger. They do not remain silent. They approach him, not with confrontation, but with wisdom, gentleness, and impeccable logic. One of them, perhaps a trusted aide-de-camp who has been with him for years, steps forward. The scripture says, his servants came near. This suggests a careful, respectful approach. They don't shout at him. They draw close into his personal space, into the circle of his fury, and they speak softly. "My father," one of them begins. What a beautiful, disarming form of address. He does not say "my lord" or "commander" or "sir." He says, "my father." It is a term of deep respect, but also of intimacy and affection. It reframes the entire conversation. This is not a soldier questioning a general. It is a son speaking to a father. It is an appeal to relationship, not to rank. It is an attempt to soften his heart, to remind him of the bonds of loyalty and care that exist between them. In that single phrase, "my father," you feel the love and concern that motivates their intervention. They are not trying to win an argument. They are trying to save the man they serve. Then they present their gentle, unassailable argument. If the prophet had told you to do some great thing, would you not have done it? This question is a masterpiece of psychology and spiritual wisdom. They know their master. They know his ambition, his drive, his capacity for great things. If Elisha had commanded him to conquer a fortified city, to lead a charge against an impossible foe, to bring back the hide of a mythical beast, or to build a great monument, Naaman would have leaped at the chance. Why? Because great deeds feed the ego. They are worthy of a great man. They provide an opportunity to earn one's reward, to prove one's valor. Naaman would have gladly undertaken a difficult, heroic quest to earn his healing. The problem is not that the task is too hard. The problem is that it is too easy. It is too simple. It is too humble. The servant's question holds up a mirror to Naaman's own heart. It exposes the paradox of his pride. He is willing to do the hard thing, the glorious thing, but he scoffs at the simple thing. It is often the simple acts of obedience that God requires of us: to forgive someone, to speak a word of truth, to pray quietly, to serve humbly that are the most difficult for our proud hearts to perform. Having exposed the core issue with this gentle question, the servant then presses the point with even simpler logic. How much more than he reasons when he tells you wash and be clean? The argument is irrefutable. You were prepared to do something spectacular and difficult. Why are you refusing to do something so incredibly simple, especially when the promised reward is the very thing you have traveled so far and risked so much to obtain? They are essentially saying, what do you have to lose? Your pride is already wounded. You are already here. You have already endured the journey. Why turn back now at the very last step simply because the step is smaller than you expected? It is a moment of profound grace. God is speaking to Naaman again, not this time through a prophet's formal decree, but through the common-sense wisdom and loving concern of his own men. The ancient rabbis often taught that a wise person is one who is willing to learn from everyone. Here, the great general is being schooled in wisdom by his own servants. They are not theologians. They are soldiers. But their simple practical faith cuts through the complex knots of Naaman's pride. You can see the battle on Naaman's face. The rage begins to subside, replaced by a look of contemplation. The servant's words have found their mark. They have pierced the armor of his anger. He looks at their faces, and he sees not insubordination, but genuine care. They are not mocking him. They are pleading with him. They want their father to be well. He replays their logic in his mind. If he had told you to do some great thing, yes, of course I would have. Would you not have done it? Yes. How much more than when he tells you wash and be clean? The truth of it is like a cool cloth on his fevered pride. It is so simple, so obvious. His rage now seems foolish, childish. He has been acting like a spoiled potentate, not a desperate man seeking a cure. The decision hangs in the balance. He looks back in the direction of Elijah's house. He looks south toward the Jordan Valley. He looks at the faces of his men. The anger has broken like a fever. A quiet, fragile resolve begins to form in its place. He has come this far. He has humbled himself to come to Israel, to go to the king, to be redirected to this prophet. What is one more step? What is one more act of submission? However foolish it may seem, perhaps he thinks of his wife, her face etched with sorrow. Perhaps he thinks of the long, lonely nights, feeling his own skin, dreading the future. What is his pride worth compared to a life of health and freedom from this creeping horror? His servant's gentle appeal has given him the courage to take the final, most difficult step, the step down from the chariot of his own self-importance. With a sigh not of anger, but of surrender, he gives a new command. Not to retreat to Damascus, but to proceed. To go down to the Jordan. The mood of the caravan shifts instantly. The tension dissolves, replaced by a quiet, hopeful anticipation. The soldiers who were just moments before preparing for a bitter journey home now turn their faces toward the river. They are going to see this through. Their commander, their father, has listened to them. He has chosen the path of humility. The procession moves again, no longer in a rage, but with a new tentative purpose. They begin the descent from the hills of Samaria down into the wide, hot and humid expanse of the Jordan Valley. It is a journey downward in every sense. Geographically, they are descending to one of the lowest points on earth. Socially, Naaman is descending from his high horse of pride. Spiritually, he is descending into the waters of obedience, the necessary prerequisite for his rising to new life. The battle of pride has been fought, and thanks to the loving intervention of his servants, humility is on the verge of winning the day. The muddy waters of the Jordan await. The journey down to the Jordan River is a journey of contemplation. The angry storm in Naaman's heart has passed, leaving behind a strange and unfamiliar calm. The sun is hot, the air thick, but he barely notices. He is a general on his way to a new kind of battlefield, one where the enemy is his own doubt and the weapon of victory is simple obedience. The chariots and soldiers descend from the rolling hills of Samaria into the broad, flat Rift Valley, a great geological scar upon the earth. The landscape becomes starker, the vegetation more sparse, clustered only where water is found. Finally, they arrive at the banks of the Jordan. You stand there with Naaman, and you see the river through his eyes. It is not the mighty mythic river of faith, but a physical reality. Depending on the season, it may be a modest, slow-moving stream, its banks thick with reeds and tamarisk bushes. The water is not the crystal-clear, vibrant blue of the Abana and Pharpar that he so proudly proclaimed. It is murky brown with the silt and sediment it carries on its long journey down to the Dead Sea. It looks common. It looks dirty. This is the final test of his resolve. Every fiber of his being conditioned by a lifetime of command and a culture that valued appearance and strength rebels at the sight. This is the water that is supposed to cleanse him, this muddy stream. The servant's logic had made sense back on the hillside, but here, faced with the physical reality, the absurdity of the prophet's command feels fresh and potent. Doubt whispers in his ear again. This is a fool's errand. Turn back now, before you humiliate yourself completely. His soldiers and servants stand back, watching him. They have brought him this far with their gentle wisdom, but now he must take the final steps alone. No one can obey for him. No one can have faith for him. He looks at the water, then perhaps at his own hands, at the skin on his arms, where the dreaded disease makes its presence known. He is caught between the ugliness of his affliction and the ugliness of the prescribed cure. He is at the intersection of desperation and obedience. Slowly, deliberately, he begins to disrobe. This is an act of profound vulnerability. He is not just removing his armor and his fine linen tunic. He is stripping away the very symbols of his identity. The commander's armor is laid aside. The nobleman's robe is removed. He stands exposed, not as Naaman, the great, the hero of Aram, but simply as Naaman, a sick man. His soldiers' men, who have only ever seen him as a pillar of strength, now see his weakness. They see the mottled patches on his skin, the physical evidence of the secret sorrow he has carried for so long. There, on the banks of the Jordan, his hidden shame is brought into the light. This act of disrobing is the first true step of his cleansing, a shedding of the pride and pretense that have defined his life. He walks toward the water's edge. The muddy ground squishes under his bare feet. The air is still. The only sounds are the gentle lapping of the water and the buzz of insects in the reeds. He takes a breath and steps into the Jordan. The water is cool against his skin. He wades in deeper, the murky water swirling around his knees, then his waist. He stops, looks around him. This is it. The moment of truth. The prophet's command was specific: wash yourself 7 times. 7. The number of divine completion, of perfection, of God's covenant and rest. In the creation story, God rested on the 7th day. The Sabbath is the 7th day. The sacred feasts of Israel are often built around patterns of 7. For Naaman, it is simply a number, an instruction to be followed. He takes a deep breath and lowers himself into the water, submerging completely. The brown water closes over his head, a moment of sensory deprivation, of surrender. It is a kind of burial. He pushes back up, sputtering water streaming from his hair and beard. He wipes his eyes and immediately instinctively looks at his skin. Nothing. There is no change. The pale patches are still there. The thickened skin is still rough. A wave of disappointment, cold and sharp, washes over him. For a fleeting moment, the rage threatens to return. I knew it. This is useless. The temptation to storm out of the river, to curse the prophet and this entire land, is immense. But the memory of his servants, plea the echo of their gentle logic, holds him there. The command was not to dip once. It was to dip 7 times. His obedience is not yet complete. This is a profound spiritual reality. Often, when we take a first step of faith, we expect an immediate miraculous result. We pray once and expect the problem to vanish. We forgive once and expect the bitterness to disappear instantly. But God's work in us is often a process. It requires a patient, persevering obedience, even when we see no immediate results. The first dip is an act of will. The subsequent dips are acts of faith, a choice to continue trusting the command, even in the absence of evidence. With a renewed sense of determination, he lowers himself again. A second time. He emerges. He checks his skin. Still nothing. The slimy mud of the riverbed clings to his feet. He feels foolish. A great Aramean general bobbing up and down in a muddy Israelite creek. A third time, he goes under. He comes up water cascading from his shoulders. He looks again. No change. The sun beats down on his wet skin. He can feel the eyes of his men on him. He can imagine their thoughts. Is their master being played for a fool a 4th time? The halfway point. The number often associated with the earth, the 4 corners of the world. He pushes up out of the water, gasping for air. He dares to look. Still leprous. Still unclean. The despair is a heavy weight in his chest. This is harder than any battle he has ever fought. The fight against an external enemy is simple compared to this internal war against doubt and disappointment. A 5th time. Under he goes into the brown water. Back up he comes. Still no miracle. Still just a sick man in a muddy river. How easy it would be to give up now. To say I tried. It didn't work. The prophet is a fraud. A 6th time. This dip requires the most faith of all. He is so close to the end of the command, yet he has seen absolutely no proof that it is working. This is the obedience of the long haul, the faith that keeps going just because God said so. He submerges himself one more time, surrendering to the water, surrendering to the process. He comes up. He looks. Nothing has changed. His skin is still the skin of a leper. One more time. The seventh time. The number of completion. There is no reason to believe this time will be any different from the first 6. Human logic says that if 6 dips did nothing, the 7th will also do nothing. But he is no longer operating on human logic. He has come this far. He will see the command through to its end. He is exhausted, humbled, and stripped of all his former pride. He is no longer the great commander expecting a spectacle. He is just a man holding onto the barest thread of hope, a thread woven from a servant girl's faith, a prophet's strange command, and his own men's loving counsel. He takes one final deep breath, and for the 7th and final time, he plunges himself into the waters of the Jordan. He goes down into the murky depths, a final act of surrender, a complete release of his own will. And this time, when he rises from the water, something is different. The water streams off of him, but as it does, it reveals something new. He feels a tingling sensation on his skin, a feeling he has not felt in years. He looks down at his hands, his arms, his chest. The pale patches are gone. The rough, thickened skin has vanished. The blemishes have disappeared. The lesions are healed. His flesh is not just healthy, it is perfect. It is smooth, clear, and unblemished. The scripture describes it with a beautifully tender image. His flesh was restored and became clean, like that of a young boy. It is a total, instantaneous, and miraculous transformation. The body of a battle-scarred, middle-aged warrior has been given the skin of a child. It is a picture not just of healing, but of rebirth. He has been born again from the waters of the Jordan. The 7 dips were like 7 days of a new creation, and on the 7th his flesh was made new. He stands there in the middle of the river, stunned in absolute awe. He runs his hands over his arms, his face. It is real. He is clean. The disease that had been his constant companion, his secret shame, his death sentence, is gone. It has been washed away in the muddy waters of the river he despised. A great cry of joy, of relief, of pure, unadulterated gratitude erupts from his throat. It is a sound that echoes across the water and through the still air. His men on the bank, who had been watching with breathless anticipation, erupt in cheers. They see his clean skin, his transformed body. They see the miracle. Their father is healed. Their gamble of gentle persuasion has paid off in the most spectacular way possible. Naaman walks out of the river a completely different man from the one who walked in. The man who walked in was a proud, angry, leprous general. The man who walks out is a humbled, grateful, cleansed soul. His physical healing is the outward sign of a far deeper inward transformation. He has been healed of his leprosy, but he has also been healed of his pride. He has learned the most important lesson of his life, that the power of God is not found in the mighty rivers of human strength and pride, but in the humble waters of obedience and faith. He learned that God's gifts cannot be bought with gold and silver, but are received with empty, open hands. The ancient sages often reflected on the symbolism of this moment. They saw in Naaman's cleansing a foreshadowing of Christian baptism. Just as Naaman was buried in the waters of the Jordan and rose to a new life, a new physical reality, so too are believers buried with Christ in baptism and raised to walk in newness of life. It is a death to the old self, the self of pride, sin, and decay, and a resurrection to a new self cleansed and made new by the grace of God. Naaman went down an Aramean, a worshiper of Rimmon, a man of the world. He comes up from the water with the first stirrings of a new heart, a heart that has personally encountered the power of the living God of Israel. He quickly puts on his clothes, but he is a changed man. The way he carries himself is different. The arrogance is gone, replaced by a profound and joyful humility. His first thought is not to race back to Damascus to show off his new health. His first thought is to go back to the man of God, to go back to Elisha's humble house. He has received an incalculable gift, and his heart overflows with a need to express his gratitude. He is no longer going back to negotiate or demand. He is going back to worship. The journey back up the hill to Samaria will be a journey of praise, a pilgrimage of a newborn soul. The return journey from the Jordan to Elisha's house is a joyous procession. The oppressive cloud of despair and anger has been utterly dispersed, replaced by the brilliant sunshine of a miracle. The soldiers and servants who had followed their master in fearful silence on the way down now follow him with joyful and animated conversation. They have been first-hand witnesses to the power of the God of Israel. Their own faith has been ignited by the fire of their master's healing. And Naaman himself, he is a man reborn. You see him in his chariot, but his posture is different. The rigid, prideful stance is gone, replaced by a relaxed and joyful energy. He looks at his hands on the reins, not with dread, but with wonder. The skin is smooth, healthy, the skin of a young man. Every glance is a fresh reminder of the grace he has received. The world looks different to him. The dusty landscape of Samaria no longer seems contemptible. It seems sacred, for it is the land where he has met the living God. The humble river he scorned has become his place of rebirth. The caravan arrives once more at the unimpressive dwelling of Elisha. The great commander and his entourage again fill the dusty lane. But this time, the atmosphere is entirely different. There is no simmering rage, no wounded pride. Naaman does not wait in his chariot, expecting the prophet to come to him. He dismounts immediately. He walks to the door, not as a potentate demanding service, but as a grateful believer seeking to give thanks. This time, he stands before the prophet in person. Elisha, his teaching lesson complete, now receives him. The two men stand face to face, the prophet of the true God and the miraculously healed pagan general. Naaman, filled with awe and gratitude, makes a declaration that is nothing short of a conversion. It is the theological climax of the entire story. He looks at Elijah, and with a voice ringing with the conviction of a changed heart, he says, "Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth, but in Israel." This is a monumental confession of faith. It is the ancient equivalent of the sinner's prayer. He is not just saying that Israel's God is powerful or that he is a great healer. He is making a statement of exclusive monotheism. No God in all the earth but in Israel. He is renouncing the gods of his homeland, the powerful Rimmon, in whose temple he has bowed countless times. He is renouncing the entire pagan worldview that has shaped him. In a single moment of clarity born from his miraculous experience, he has grasped the central truth of the universe. There is only one true and living God, and He is the God who has just cleansed him. His heart overflowing, Naaman immediately tries to express his gratitude in the only way he knows how. He turns to his servants, who begin to bring forward the treasure. The heavy chests of silver, the coffers of gold, the magnificent embroidered robes. He presents them to Elisha. "Now, therefore, please take a blessing from your servant," he says. The language is transformed. Before he came to buy a cure. Now he offers this treasure as a blessing, a gift, a token of his immense gratitude. He even calls himself Elisha's servant. The proud commander, who was insulted by a message from a servant, now willingly takes the title of servant himself. This is the moment of truth for Elisha and for the integrity of God's grace. Naaman, in his newfound zeal, is trying to pay for his miracle after the fact. He is attempting to reintroduce the logic of the marketplace into the economy of grace. He feels an overwhelming need to give something in return because the gift he has received feels too great to be truly free. But Elisha's response is firm, immediate, and crucial for Naaman's understanding of this new faith. He raises a hand, refusing the gift, and he makes a solemn vow. "As the Lord lives before, whom I stand," he declares, "I will receive none." This is an oath of the highest order. "As the Lord lives" is a recognition that his refusal is not based on his own whim, but on a divine principle. "Before whom I stand" is a beautiful and humble description of his prophetic office. He is not a freelancer. He is a servant who stands in the presence of the King of Kings, and he acts according to his king's protocol. Why does he refuse it? Is not because he is personally wealthy or has no need for the treasure. Prophets in Israel were often poor. This fortune could have funded his ministry for the rest of his life. He refuses for two profound theological reasons. First, to accept payment would be to diminish the miracle. It would turn a spectacular act of God's free grace into a transaction, a service rendered for a fee. It would suggest that God's power can be bought and sold. The healing had to be free so that Naaman and all who heard the story would know without a doubt that it was a gift from God alone, not a feat accomplished by a prophet who was then handsomely rewarded. Grace, by its very definition, is unmerited and cannot be earned or paid for. Second, Elijah is protecting Naaman himself. He is teaching the new convert his second great lesson, how to live in response to grace. Our response to God's free gifts is not payment, but worship and obedience. To have accepted the gift would have allowed Naaman to feel that he had, in some small way, settled his account. By refusing, Elisha keeps the gift in its proper perspective, an unpayable debt of grace that can only be answered with a life of gratitude and service. Naaman is insistent. He urges Elisha to take it, but the prophet is resolute. He will not touch it. Naaman finally accepts the refusal, and his mind turns to the future. He has made his great confession of faith, but now he must return to Damascus, to a pagan land, to his duties as a commander. How is he to live out this new faith in a hostile environment? He makes a strange and poignant request. If not, he says, acknowledging Elisha's refusal of the gift, "Please let your servant be given 2 mule loads of earth." Why does he ask for dirt? It seems like an odd souvenir. But in the ancient world, it was widely believed that a god's power was tied to their land. A god was the god of a particular place. By taking Israelite soil back to Damascus, Naaman is in his own mind creating a small piece of holy ground, an embassy of Israel in the heart of Aram. He intends to build an altar on this sacred soil so that when he worships the Lord, he is doing so, in a sense, on his own territory. It is a sign of his sincere desire to worship Yahweh and Yahweh alone. For your servant will no longer offer burnt offering or sacrifice to other gods, but to the Lord he vows. His conversion is complete. He is dedicating his future worship exclusively to the God of Israel. Then he brings up a profound ethical dilemma, a problem that has troubled new believers in every age. In this matter, may the Lord pardon your servant. He begins his voice filled with concern. He describes his civic duty. When my master, the king of Aram, goes into the temple of Rimmon to worship and he leans on my arm, and I bow myself in the temple of Rimmon, when I bow myself in the temple of Rimmon, may the Lord pardon your servant in this matter. This is the cry of a man caught between his newfound faith and his old life. He is the king's right-hand man. His job requires him to physically support the king as he bows to a pagan idol. If he refuses, it would be an act of treason, likely costing him his life and potentially causing a political crisis. He is not asking for permission to worship Rimmon. His heart is now devoted to the Lord. He is asking for forgiveness in advance for an act of outward conformity that his public duty will compel him to perform. It is a very real, very difficult ethical problem. Elijah's response to this is filled with pastoral wisdom and grace. He does not give him a complex set of rules. He does not condemn him or lay a heavy burden of legalism upon this new fragile faith. He simply says, "Go in peace." These 4 words are a gift of immense compassion. Go in peace. Elisha is entrusting Naaman to God's ongoing grace. He is not giving him a license to sin, but rather releasing him from an anxiety that could crush his new faith. He is essentially saying God understands your situation. He has cleansed your heart. Go and live out your new faith and trust in His mercy to guide you through the complexities you will face. It is a beautiful example of meeting a new believer where they are and trusting the Holy Spirit to continue the work of sanctification. So Naaman departs his heart full, his body healed, his spirit at peace. He and his caravan begin the long journey home to Damascus, a man forever changed. But the story does not end there. There is a tragic postscript, a shadow that falls across this bright scene of redemption. You are back at Elijah's house. Elisha is inside, in communion with God. But his servant Gehazi is watching the departing caravan. He has been watching the entire exchange, and his heart is not filled with joy at Naaman's conversion. It is filled with greed. Gehazi has seen the treasure, the silver, the gold, the fine clothing. He heard Elisha refuse it, and in his heart he thinks his master is a fool. A voice of cynical worldly logic speaks within him. See, he thinks to himself, my master was too easy on this Aramean Naaman in not accepting from his hand what he brought. Gehazi feels cheated. He believes they were entitled to that wealth. It was their due for performing the miracle. He then makes a fateful vow. a dark parallel to Elijah's holy oath. As the Lord lives, Gehazi swears, misusing the same sacred words, I will run after him and get something from him. He sets off at a run, chasing down Naaman's caravan. Naaman, seeing a man running after them, recognizes him as Elisha's servant. Filled with concern, he halts his chariot and gets down to meet him. Is all well? Naaman asks, perhaps fearing something has happened to the prophet. Gehazi, now fully committed to his lie, spins a deceitful tale. All is well, he says reassuringly. Then he launches into his fabrication. My master has sent me to see just now. 2 young men of the sons of the prophets have come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. It is a clever lie. It sounds plausible, charitable, and modest compared to the vast fortune Naaman had offered. Naaman, in his joyful and grateful state, is more than happy to oblige. His heart is open and generous. Be pleased to take 2 talents, he urges. He insists. He is delighted to have an opportunity to give. He has 2 of his servants bind 2 talents of silver, a huge sum of money, perhaps 150 pounds of it, into 2 bags, along with the 2 sets of fine clothing. He even sends his own servants to carry the heavy load for Gehazi. Gehazi leads them back, but stops short of Elisha's house. He directs the servants to deposit the treasure in a secret place at a hill or a tower known as the Ophel. He takes the treasure from their hands, hides it away for himself, and sends the servants back to Naaman. Then he saunters back into the house, trying to appear as if nothing has happened. He stands before his master, the picture of innocence. Elisha looks at him. Where have you been, Gehazi? The prophet asks. The question is simple, but it carries the weight of divine insight. Your servant went nowhere, Gehazi lies, compounding his sin. He has gone from greed to deception, to a bald-faced lie, to the man of God. Elijah's response is chilling. The prophet was not physically present, but his spirit was. Did not my heart go with you? Elisha says, when the man turned from his chariot to meet you. Gehazi's secret sin was not secret at all. God saw everything, and he revealed it to his prophet. Elisha then unleashes a series of sharp, convicting questions. Is this the time to receive money and to receive clothing, olive groves and vineyards, sheep and oxen, male and female servants? He exposes the full scope of Gehazi's greedy fantasy. Gehazi didn't just want a little cash. He was planning to use Naaman's silver to set himself up as a wealthy landowner, to buy a whole new life of luxury. He sought to profit from God's grace to commercialize a miracle. He chose earthly treasure over heavenly integrity. Then comes the terrible sentence, a poetic and awful justice. Elisha declares, therefore, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. The very disease that was lifted from the faithful pagan through grace will now be transferred to the faithless, greedy Israelite. The cleansing that Naaman received by stripping himself of pride and possessions is reversed for Gehazi, who tried to clothe himself in them. And immediately as the words leave the prophet's mouth, Gehazi feels the change. He looks at his skin, and he is a leper. He went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. The story ends on this stark, sobering contrast. Naaman, the outsider, the pagan, The enemy is brought into a state of grace, healing, and peace through a simple, humble faith. Gehazi, the insider, the servant of the prophet, the one who lived at the very center of God's miracles, is cast out into a state of disease and shame because of his greed and deceit. It is a powerful, timeless warning. Being near to the things of God is not the same as having a heart for the things of God. And the grace that is freely offered can be forfeited by a heart that chooses the treasures of this world over the treasure of knowing and serving the Lord. And so, as you drift into sleep, hold on to the image of Naaman rising from the muddy Jordan, his skin like a child's, his heart overflowing with a new and wondrous faith. It is a story that reminds us that no one is too powerful to need God's grace, and no one is too broken to receive it. The path to healing and peace is not through the mighty rivers of our own strength, but through the humble, sometimes muddy waters of obedience. It is a simple path open to all who are willing to lay down their pride, listen to the quiet voice of faith, and simply do what the Lord says. Go and be clean. Go and be at peace.